the Fenway Rundown, taking you inside the Red Sox clubhouse with the latest news and analysis from Chris Cotillo.
Something nobody talks about at all. No backsliding from anybody who was really good last year.
And Sean McAdam.
The team has the arrow pointed up in terms of competing in the near future.
It's the Fenway Rundown, brought to you by MassLive.
Friday Fenway Rundown from JetBlue Park. I'm Chris Cotillo. Sean McAdam will be alongside in a second for the main event, which is an interview with Roman Anthony. Roman was gracious enough to sit down with us for 15 minutes this morning, talk about leadership, his first full Major League season, how this camp is different than last year, Team USA, and a whole lot more. Obviously, we try to do some of these player interviews while we're down here in camp, and Roman will be the first of those. We'll be back throughout the week from our home studios with some regular Fenway Rundowns. But for now, enjoy Roman Anthony. All right, live at the picnic tables outside the home clubhouse at JetBlue Park. We're with Roman Anthony of the Red Sox and Team USA. First of all, just how does that sound?
Awesome. Yeah, dream come true for sure. Super excited for the opportunity.
This camp, obviously, for you compared to last year, must be really different. Last year, you're trying to prove yourself. You were trying to make the team. Now you are, in a way, a bona fide big leaguer with, stripes. I know the year didn't end the way you wanted to. But how is your approach to this camp different than it was a year ago when you were, in big league camp for the first time?
Yeah, I think it's different in the sense that I know what to expect, on just a big league camp basis. But I don't think the approach to it changes, right? I think, my job isn't secure every day, and there's always someone coming, and there's always someone behind you if you're there in the big leagues. So for me, it's a similar approach of hey, I still got to get better every day. Still got to continue to learn from the guys around me, continue to help the guys who maybe are in their first big league camp, and like I was last year. But from a work aspect and from a point of view aspect, it's still, coming in here and trying to dominate every single day and earn my spot.
It's been a whirlwind year for you, Roman, when you think about where you were a year ago, getting the call up in June, having a terrific first couple of months, getting the contract extension, now the WBC. As you look back, is it kind of strange to think about how much has happened to you since, say, 12 months ago?
Yeah, it's been an exciting year for sure. I wouldn't say strange or surprising. I'm not surprised by the success or failure that I have. It's a tough game. I work as hard as I can every single day. I try to take advantage of every single day. So, when good things happen, I don't want to say I'm surprised, or I don't want to look back on the year and say wow, I'm shocked it went the way it did. But for sure, it's nice to just kind of sit back when you have time and think over it and kind of pat yourself on the back, for a quick second, but with the understanding that, there's a lot of baseball to be played, a lot, left to prove, a lot of, things to accomplish for myself and a full year of baseball ahead. So, for me, last year's in the past now and just looking to build on this year.
You've talked about, and it's been said, that the game is a game of failure, that even the best players are going to fail 70% of the time. You did struggle for the first few weeks, and you've talked about how much you learned about preparing and getting ready that enabled you to kind of turn things around about 3 weeks into your Major League career. When you look back on those first few weeks where you really kind of did struggle for the first time in pro ball, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, for me, I think you learn so much more from failure than you do success. And for me, that first few weeks was a whirlwind for sure. And for me, I failed the first day I was there, and from there on out, I failed quite a bit the first, like you said, few weeks of my career. And but for me, I learned a lot during those failures. I learned, why I failed, how to, try to avoid those failures as best as possible. Just things like that you got to build off of, and it's a failures game, and you fail, you hit 300, you fail 70% of the time, right? So it's the best fail more than they succeed, and just understanding that and leaning into that and not, shying away from it and trying to avoid it. You kind of just got to take it head on. You got to play without fear, and you're going to fail, you're going to make errors, you're going to strike out. It's part of the game. But for me, it was about learning and learning from the guys around me and leaning on the veteran guys and learning from the staff and just talking to different guys, trying to get advice and understand, how to kind of fail forward in a sense.
What surprised you the most about the big league life, whether it be the speed of the game? Is that what you expected? The lifestyle, the clubhouse? Like, what caught you off guard, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, everything is it's so much different from the minor leagues. It's so much better than you could ever imagine. But at the same time, it's easy to kind of get wrapped into it. It's you're constantly traveling. It's easy to I don't want to say slack off, but it can be easy to kind of lose routine or with all the travel. Hopping on a plane after a game, traveling across the country, playing the next day, like things like that. It's real easy to lose routine or get away from what works for you, and I learned that fast, and I learned that having a routine that was I don't want to say flexible, but at the same time having a routine that was simple and worked for me, and adjusting off of that routine, day by day. The more we travel, the more I learn about opposing teams, the more I learn about opposing cities, like adjusting off of those routines to where I can do something consistent every single day to get me ready. That was the biggest thing for me was the routine side of it. And I felt like when I started to really kind of take off there towards the end before the injury, I was dialed in with my routine, the preparation, everything off the field, everything was very, very locked in. So that way when I got on the field, it kind of slowed everything down.
You've, gone from, a top prospect to a guy who is kind of the face of this franchise in a lot of ways. How has that changed just everyday life, like your courtside at the Celtics versus maybe a year ago you weren't, like getting recognized in public and just the spotlight? Like, have you noticed that kind of switch flipped really, really quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it's all nice. It's all, kind of good accolades in a sense, but it's very easy, like I said, to kind of get lost in all that. And I'm sure you guys have seen it more than anyone, right? For me, it's trying to avoid all that as much as I can, trying to avoid the social media, the expectations in a sense, all the things like that to me, don't really matter when I get into that clubhouse. It's more so just, I'm here with my guys. We're trying to win a World Series, and that's the only goal. And everything off the field will take care of itself. But, it's for me, trying not to worry about anything off the field except just showing up here and doing the right things and being the best team that I can be.
You talked about how important routine was for you and how important it is going forward. This is going to be a little different last year. You played mostly right field when you came up. It now looks like you're going to be splitting some time between left field and DH, and the DH spot has its own demands and routines. What have you learned about maybe that role? Who have you talked to, and how do you plan to approach that?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of the guys about it. A lot of the guys that DH, guys who have DH in their past. It's a really unique role. It takes a lot of kind of different preparation than maybe playing left field or whatever it may be. Like you can get fall into the trap of sitting around a lot if you're DHing and. So for me, it was just constantly about staying moving, similar to when, the days that I wasn't starting, or maybe there was a lefty at the beginning and I was on the bench, learning how to keep moving, learning how to get ready to, get called on in the ninth to maybe just play defense, or to get called on in the seventh to go, take an important at-bat with runners on and 2 outs. Like, it's things like that. And for me, it's putting yourself in those situations in practice before you get there into the game. So that way when you're in the game, you're like, okay, I've worked on this. I've gotten in the cage. I've hopped on the machine and said, okay, there's a runner on second, third, 2 outs, some pinch hitting, lefty. I'm simulating all of that in the cage and in my work and in my preparation, so that way, when I get up, I know my matchup. I know who I'm probably going to see. I faced him before. I faced guys similar to him before. I've watched the way that he throws, guys who are similar to myself. All the things like that lead into it, so that way when you get into the box, for me, and like I said, I feel like I did a great job at the end of the year. Like, when I stepped into that box or when I took the field, I was so overly prepared and so ready for anything that came at me, and I was almost expecting everything to come at me. So that way, when things happened, it wasn't fast. The game was very slow. Everything, kind of worked out the way that I had practiced, and I had already put myself in that situation in practice, which was huge.
Did it surprise you to learn how much detail there is to cover at the big league level? I know you've talked about being in the minor leagues and not having anything beyond a very basic scouting report about the guy you're facing tonight. Here, you've got video, you've got every conceivable bit of information and data to be able to tap into. I'm sure that can almost seem like too much, as you just said, but to know that there's so much out there to help. When did you figure that part out, that there was a lot there to tap into?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so much different, right? In the minor leagues, there's not as many, matchup based, you don't really get the lefty specialists in the minor leagues. You don't get certain guys like that to come in the seventh inning and just things like that, learning about that. And it all goes back to, preparing and getting into the video room and seeing who you're probably going to face, bullpens, organizations, what they like to do as orgs. It's every org is different, every guy is different, everyone, that's why the game's so unique. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot different for sure, and there's a lot more that goes into it. And for me, that was, again, the biggest thing that I learned was, like, I need to be overly prepared, whereas there were times in AA, AAA where I felt like I could roll out at 6 o'clock and just kind of go out and do my thing off of, just a basic scouting report and then just work off of that. That's not the case in the big leagues for sure. But it's all part of that learning curve. It's all part of what you learn as a young player. And for me, it was learning from veteran guys.
On that, obviously Bregman's gone, Ref Snyder's gone, two guys that have been really instrumental to the leadership culture here. I think for the position player side, safe to say it's Trevor's clubhouse. How do you, as a guy in your early 20s, with just, 70-something games in the big leagues, become a leader or step into that role this year, but also, be wary of the overstepping thing? Yeah. And just what is the message from the older guys about wanting you to embrace more of that, considering, kind of your standing in the league at this point?
Yeah, we haven't talked much about it. I think it's more so something for me, like I try to lead by example. Like you just mentioned, don't want to overstep. There's a lot of guys in here, and the majority of the guys in here have, more time than myself, and we have a great group of veterans, as you mentioned, Trevor, and so many guys in here that helped me last year as well. So, for me, it's kind of just following what those guys do, seeing how they lead every single day, and for me, trying to go out there and play and lead by example with the way that I play, the way that I prepare, the way that I get ready. And then, from the vocal side of things, I'm not scared to be vocal, but at the same time, like you said, there's guys in our clubhouse who do that. So I'm not too worried about, kind of getting up there right now and holding a meeting or anything of that sort. But, when that time is called upon for myself, I'll be ready.
And last question, you can't say winning a World Series because that is the ultimate team answer. If you were to set one personal goal for 2026, what would it be?
Be better in every aspect of every stat that I had last year. I think for me, there was a lot more to unlock with everything as I went on and as I got more comfortable. And before I had that unfortunate injury, I felt like I was just starting to kind of tap into everything that I do so well. So for me, like, again, pretty cliche, pretty broad, but be better in literally every aspect of every stat and aspect of the game that there is.
That's Roman Anthony. Roman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.